All right, welcome. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on some of the invisible forces that are quietly reshaping our health, our bodies, and maybe even our future. So, let's just dive right in.
You ever get that feeling that something is just off? You know? That behind all the headlines about our health, there's a bigger story that just isn't being told. We're seeing some really alarming trends, and it makes you wonder, what is really going on here?
Well, for starters, just look at this number, 50%. In the last half-century, average sperm counts in Western countries have dropped by more than half. I mean, this isn't some small dip. This is, for all intents and purposes, a reproductive freefall.
And at the exact same time, the rate of testicular cancer has basically doubled. It's now one of the most common cancers that we find in young men.
It's not just physical either. We're also seeing this really concerning spike in things like ADHD, measurable drops in average IQ, and more mood disorders like depression. So you've got declining fertility, rising cancer, cognitive challenges. You gotta ask, right? Could all of these things actually be connected?
While the source material we're looking at today suggests that, yeah, they are. They're linked by one main suspect: the huge number of chemicals we run into every single day, creating what scientists have started calling our body burden. The culprits are called Endocrine Disrupting Chemicals, or EDCs. The easiest way to think about it is this: your endocrine system is your body's master communication network, and it uses hormones as its messengers. EDCs are like chemical imposters that hack into that system. They can pretend to be hormones, they can block the real ones from doing their jobs, or they can just mess up their production entirely.
And the crazy thing is, they are everywhere. Phthalates, they're in your shampoo and your food wrap. BPA, it's lining your canned goods and it's even on your receipts. Atrazine is a herbicide that ends up in our drinking water. And PFAS, you've probably heard of these, the forever chemicals, are in your non-stick pans. Get this, even the blue light from our screens can act as a non-chemical disruptor, totally messing with our hormonal cycles.
So how does this stuff even get inside us? Well, it's a whole journey. It starts in factories and on farms, then it gets washed into our water supply, and it leaches out of packaging and into our food. Then we eat it, drink it, and absorb it. And because our bodies really struggle to get rid of them, they just build up over time, creating that cumulative body burden.
But here's the thing. This buildup does a lot more than just make us feel sick in the short term. According to the source, these chemicals are actually agents of long-term biological change, what it calls a kind of great reprogramming. And you can see the hormonal hit so clearly. Study after study links higher exposure to chemicals like BPA and phthalates with significantly lower testosterone levels. It's basically a direct chemical assault on a cornerstone of male health.
And this brings us to this really critical and frankly kind of scary idea called the developmental origins of adult disease. The concept is that when you're exposed to these chemicals during really sensitive times, like in the womb, it can permanently change how your organs are built. The damage isn't obvious when you're a kid, it just lies dormant. And then decades later, it shows up as cancer, infertility, or other chronic diseases. It's like the body has been pre-programmed for illness from the very beginning.
Okay, so when you hear all this, it sounds so damaging, it's so widespread, that your mind naturally goes to one place, right? Is this on purpose? I mean, is there some kind of coordinated plot going on here?
The source material actually tackles this head-on. It doesn't shy away from it, even referencing this now famous quote. The theory, of course, is that chemicals like atrazine are part of some deliberate operation to alter entire populations.
So what's the verdict? Well, while the search for a deliberate plot is totally understandable given the scale of the harm, the source material is very clear. There is just no credible evidence for a state-sponsored conspiracy. The documents, the data, it just doesn't back it up.
So if it's not a secret government plot, then what in the world is it? The source argues the answer is something a lot more ordinary, but, maybe no less sinister. It's a system that consistently prioritizes profit over public health.
And if you want proof, just look at this number. $65 million. That's how much the chemical and manufacturing industries spent on federal lobbying in just 1 year, 2022, to fight, to weaken, and to delay regulations on these exact substances.
And it's not just about lobbying for the future. We're talking about a history of cover-ups. We know from internal documents that came out in lawsuits that companies knew their chemicals, like PFAS, were toxic and were building up in our blood way back in the 1970s. But instead of telling us, they buried the data to protect their bottom line.
And this really gets to the philosophical heart of the whole systemic failure. In Europe, they mostly use what's called the precautionary principle. It's basically better safe than sorry. If a chemical might be dangerous, you restrict it. But the US system, which has been heavily influenced by industry, often uses a proof of harm model. This approach demands absolute, conclusive proof that it's dangerous in humans before you act, and that can take decades to get. And while that debate goes on, we're all still being exposed. It's a system that's almost perfectly designed for inaction.
Now, let's zoom out for a second. The source material makes a really powerful argument here, that this model, a system that predictably harms vulnerable people while everyone can kind of deny responsibility, it isn't just about chemicals. It's a wider pattern, and it shows up in completely different parts of our society.
And you can see here how two very different systems can lead to similarly tragic results. On one side, you have the drive for corporate profit, combined with a captured regulatory system, and the outcome is widespread illness. On the other side, you have societal bias and prejudice, combined with a justice system that criminalizes victims, and the outcome is mass incarceration of marginalized people. The causes are different, the mechanisms are different, but the outcome is the same: predictable harm.
Let's look at a really concrete example of that second system. According to the National Crime Victimization Survey, transgender people experience violent crime at a rate more than 4 times higher than cisgender people. I mean, the numbers here are just staggering. This is a population that is under constant threat.
And what's absolutely essential to understand here is that when you see this same group overrepresented in prisons, it's very often not because they're somehow more criminal. It's the predictable end of a tragic journey. It starts with early trauma and rejection, which creates a pipeline to poverty, which forces people into criminalized survival activities where they are then targeted by the system. It's a pipeline that effectively turns victims into prisoners.
And that really brings us to our final question. Whether we're talking about chemicals that predictably make us sick or social systems that predictably criminalize victims, when the harmful outcome is this foreseeable, this consistent, is failure even the right word, or is the system actually working exactly as it was designed? It's something to think about.